Hey guys, I've got to give the biggest spoiler warning I could possibly give for this video. A review of this game is mainly a review of its story, and that story is highly spoilable. Do yourself a favor and click off right now if you haven't played Mother 3. Go play the game, and then come back afterwards. If you liked Earthbound, you'll love Mother 3, so just play it. Anyway, Mother 3. It's a game with a lot of humor, and it's a game with a lot of tragedy. It's got a cast of wacky characters, including a talking dog, a funny dancing monkey, and a time-traveling fascist with a god complex. Just look at this. It's a kid's game, right? It's made by Nintendo. It's for little babies, right? Right? It's a little hard to review Mother 3 like I did the other games in the series, because so much of the appeal of this game is its story. But for the sake of completing the series, I will be reviewing it like the others in the first part of this video, and the second part of this video will be dedicated to discussing the story. The setting and theme of the original Mother was primarily based on modern America. There were sci-fi elements, but not nearly as many as in later games, and you were basically just fighting bad guys and aggressive animals. Earthbound had a similar setting to the original Mother, but it definitely leaned more into its sci-fi themes, so you found yourself exploring alien bases, or the Mesozoic era, I guess. Mother 3 is nearly impossible to classify, especially since the setting changes throughout the game's different chapters. The game could be split into the pre-industrial era, the modern era, and Chapter 8. The emphasis on sci-fi found in Earthbound is still here, but it's shifted from focusing on aliens to focusing on robots and Porky's chimeras. In other words, I have no clue how to explain this. The game is something of a chimera itself. I was going to try and come up with some comically outlandish scenario to hammer home how absurd this game is, but then I remembered there's an entire floor of the Empire Porky building dedicated to Porky's fan club, shall we say, and I don't think I can top that. But the most incredible thing about the frankly absurd tone of most of the game is that it can immediately switch the tone to extremely serious with a single line of text. This is both the funniest and the most emotional game in the series by far. Alright, that's cool, Logan, but I don't remember asking, so shut up and talk about the gameplay. Yeah, it's Mother, alright. Not too much has been changed from the combat system in Earthbound. You still start fights with advantage and disadvantage, and you still have rolling health and PP bars, but the health bars in this game roll a lot slower than those in Earthbound, so you have more chances to heal and in fact rely on it a lot more. Also, I learned that the rolling PP bars do literally nothing and are entirely for show. If you end a battle while your PP is still rolling down, you still end up losing all that PP anyway. The rolling PP is entirely visual and has no effect on gameplay. Despite combat being mostly the same as Earthbound, there are a few differences. One change is that your party switches around a lot more, especially in the first 3 chapters. There are 6 fully playable party members, and they can be grouped into the Psy Guys, the Status Lads, and Boney. The Psy Guys are by far the hardest to generalize, because PSI has a wide variety of uses. They're basically just spellcasters, you get it, I don't need to explain it. The Status Lads are exactly what they sound like, they mainly just buff or debuff. And then there's Boney. He can sniff, because he's a dog. Good. The other big change is the sound battle mechanic. You can get combo hits and rack up extra damage if you time pressing the A button with the music. You'll be absolutely fine if you never use the combo system, and in fact it's extremely difficult to combo on an emulator, but it does, in theory, reward a more skilled player. An interesting side effect is that harder fights have more interesting music. Late-game battle themes will often use odd time signatures or sudden changes of tempo and style to make you drop your combo. The most extreme example is the Masked Man variant of Strong One, which has a time signature of almost 29/16, but due to sudden tempo changes in the middle of measures, it actually has a time signature of 71,907 40,120th notes. This makes for some really unique songs, and some that aren't exactly the most pleasant to listen to. The Overworld gameplay is extremely similar to Earthbound's. The major change is the addition of a dash feature. This is an extremely welcome change because the slow pace of movement in Earthbound constantly got on my nerves. In Mother 3, the dash mechanic, as well as the fact that the camera is far more zoomed in than Earthbound, gives the impression of moving far faster than in other games. Even when travel can take the same amount of time due to having to walk greater distances, it doesn't feel like you're spending as much time just getting from point A to point B. However, that doesn't mean the pace of the game has improved much. The long walking sections have been replaced with frequent, agonizingly long cutscenes. It's not too much of a problem unless you have to replay sections like I did with Chapter 3 because I forgot to record it, like a moron. Having the option to skip these cutscenes would have prevented this gripe, but I understand that the game wouldn't have had the same emotional impact without all of these story sections, so I see why there's all of these cutscenes. What I'm less willing to forgive are the cutscenes you have to watch over and over again, like the oxygen supply machine cutscene. I also particularly take issue with the amount of time it takes to heal using a hot spring. It takes around 5 or 6 seconds to heal, and then you have to watch as each party member slowly gets out of the hot spring. It's not a huge waste of time, but it definitely adds up as you'll be using hot springs a lot throughout your playthrough. There are also some changes to how you interact with enemies in the overworld. The off-screen unloading trick no longer works, but it's not a big loss because you can now outmaneuver a lot of enemies using the new dash mechanic. You can also no longer instantly defeat lower level enemies, but you can defeat them for no experience by dashing through them. But overall, enemies in the overworld behave nearly exactly the same as those in Earthbound. And I've talked about the ATM machines in every video in the series, so it's time I touch on those in Mother 3. They're frogs. Frogs carry all of your money. This game is beyond incredible. I would talk about the gameplay more, but if you've played Earthbound, you probably have a pretty good idea of what gameplay in Mother 3 is like, so it's finally time to talk about the real reason I wanted to make this video, actually the main reason I decided to make videos on the Mother series at all. Let's talk about the story of Mother 3. I could summarize the entire story, but I assume the majority of you watching this video have played the game before, so I'll just hit the major points for any outliers. The most shocking parts of the story happen in Chapter 1 and Chapter 8. In Chapter 1, the game pulls the rug out from under you by killing the main character Lucas's mother, Hinawa, within the first part of the game, and having his brother Klaus go missing, heavily implying he's dead. What a way to start my Nintendo game. That's a fairly shocking way to start the game, but it doesn't stick with you nearly as much as the ending. Some of you may remember when I referred to Hollow Knight's ending as one of the most emotional endings to any game I've ever played. Mother 3 is the reason I couldn't call it the most emotional. As you approach the final needle, you face off against the mysterious cyborg, the Masked Man, who has now been revealed to be Klaus. Klaus knocks out the rest of the party, so Lucas is left to face his brother alone. During the fight, Lucas's dead mother tries to reach out to the two of them, imploring them to stop fighting. After a while, her words start to reach Klaus, who realizes that he should have died after how badly he got hurt back in Chapter 1. He deliberately hits Lucas with the Thunder attack, knowing the Franklin badge will reflect the energy and kill him. He then dies in Lucas's arms and heads off to join his mother. Now, I did a god-awful job of explaining the emotional significance of this sequence, but I'm sure anybody who has played through this game was just hit with a wave of sadness just remembering it. But what I'm interested in looking at for the rest of this video is why this story works so well. Most of the characters in Mother 3 are fairly flat, and those with the most emotional moments barely get any screen time. Despite the lack of any personality in most characters, the game manages to keep you engaged the entire time, and the ending still manages to hit you like a truck, and I think it all comes back to two characters, Facade and Porky. Facade is a distraction. He arguably takes the role of primary antagonist for the majority of the game, and he's pretty damn good at it. Facade isn't terribly complex, in fact I'd argue his character is about as flat as Hinawa's, and she dies in the first hour. But he does an incredible job of keeping the player focused on him rather than Porky. Facade is extremely easy to hate. He abuses salsa, he pushes everyone around, and he's the face of the Pigmask army for the majority of the game, before the Masked Man starts to seem like the main antagonist before Porky is fully revealed in the last chapter. Facade pushes the plot forward just by being a horrible person. There was little I cared about more than just teaching this disgusting creature a lesson, and that kept me engaged even when what I was doing was relatively uninteresting, like getting the Egg of Light again for some reason. And then in Chapter 5 you have a confrontation with him on top of the Thunder Tower, and then he just falls off on his own. You do literally nothing to him, he just slips on his own banana peel and dies, except for the fact that he actually didn't die. Now he can fly around and he speaks in jazz, but this time you actually get to fight him. The only problem is after you beat him he gets away, so you have to fight him again, this time with more horns on his face, before he finally dies. I'm not certain. But he doesn't come back. Facade is a pain in your side from Chapter 3 to halfway through Chapter 8, the end of the game. He keeps the plot moving, and he allows you to approach the actual primary antagonist, Porky, with a fresh mind. Porky, called Pokey in Earthbound, but it's the same character, is the most interesting character in the game. He's incredibly evil, but you can understand how he got that way. At the beginning of Earthbound, he's a near friendless loser growing up in an abusive household. He eventually teams up with Gygas and starts to become progressively more evil until he becomes fully corrupted by Earthbound's final boss. As you fight Gygas, he gets away and continues to travel through time. By Mother 3, he's been corrupted not only by the evil of Gygas, but also by his continued time traveling. His body has become old and weak, but he still has the mind of a child. When he finds the Nowhere Islands, he sees a new place and a new group of people to toy with for his own amusement. He starts to corrupt the people of Tazmily Village and establishes a fascist government with himself as the leader, the god. When Lucas and the gang confront him in New Park City, he explains that pulling the needles from the Dark Dragon was all part of his game. As we can see from his message to the pig masks about the new chimeras, everything he's been doing has been for his own amusement. When Lucas and company get close to defeating him, he hides in the absolutely safe capsule that he had Dr. Andonuts build for him. As the name implies, he's untouchable in the capsule, absolutely safe, but you're soon informed that the capsule has absolutely no exit. You have no choice but to leave him in his absolutely safe prison, presumably to live out the rest of his life alone, if he's even capable of dying at all. The fight against Porky is integral to the efficacy of the fight with the Masked Man directly afterwards, because Porky's fate, while not as tragic as Klaus's, is sad enough to weaken the player emotionally for the fight to come. These antagonists keep the plot running smoothly and draw the player's attention so well that I doubt the ending would have nearly the same emotional impact without them. I wanted to talk more about Mother 3 because I honestly like the game so much, but I just can't really find the words to express how I feel about it. I'm sure that sounds really dumb, but you guys have played the game, so I think you know what I mean. This game is a way of making me feel emotions I didn't know existed. It strikes a wonderful balance between heartwarming wholesomeness and tear-jerking tragedy, with loads of humor and charm the entire way through. It's by far my favorite RPG, and it's my favorite story from any video game. Mother 3 was a great way to conclude the Mother series, so I don't want to hear any excuses anymore, Nintendo. Give us Mother 3. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I know this one was a little all over the place, but it was really hard to talk about a game like this. But I did my best to explain why I love it so much. If you enjoyed the video, liking and subscribing would be downright fantastic, as would following me on Twitch, link in the description. And if you have anything to say about the game or the video, leave a comment, I read every single one. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do now that I've finished my videos on the Mother series, but it should be a good time. So until the next video, keep gaming, gamers. See you then.